Welcome to the Crime Doc channel. Today, we will explore another chilling true crime tale. Back in 2012, during the Summer Olympics in London, the spotlight shone brightly on Felix Vero Sanchez, a young Puerto Rican boxer. He was hailed as a diamond, one of his country's most promising athletes destined for greatness. Forecasts of titles and gold medals surrounded him, with many believing this talented and driven young man would soar to incredible heights in the world of sports. Fast forward to 2021, and the boxer's name once again made headlines worldwide, but this time it was in the realm of criminal news. This narrative delves into a teenage infatuation that spiraled into addiction, ultimately leading to a horrific tragedy. It also examines how the author of the 2014 Maine knockout, previously praised and championed by two-time Olympic champion Vasyl Lomachenko, narrowly escaped a death sentence, but ultimately received a life prison term. Notably, despite undeniable evidence and confessions from the boxer's accomplice, he continues to adamantly deny any guilt to this day. Born on May 19, 1993, in San Juan, Puerto Rico, the aspiring boxing star grew up in a modest yet large family. From an early age, he was drawn to sports, initially setting his sights on baseball. However, a pivotal moment occurred when at the age of 9, a family friend visited with his son of the same age. A scuffle between the boys ensued during playtime, prompting the future athlete's father to suggest that if his son wished to engage in fights in the future, he should don boxing gloves. This incident led Felix to request training at a local gym, where he quickly developed a passion for boxing from his very first session. By the age of 16, he had clinched victory at the Pan American Junior Championships, followed by securing his country's championship title a year later, ultimately culminating in his participation at the Olympic Games in London. That same year, he reached the quarterfinals, signaling the start of his prosperous career in the professional boxing ring. Verdejo participated in a total of 29 bouts, emerging victorious in 27 of them. His remarkable performance in the fight against Sergio Villanueva in 2014 earned him widespread acclaim. The following year, Felix secured his inaugural championship belt with the WBO Latino title, successfully defending it on 6 subsequent occasions over the next 2 years. Spectators who witnessed his matches had no doubts that this gifted athlete would etch his name into the annals of boxing history. Now, let's turn our attention to Keishla Rodríguez. Born in November 1993 in San Juan, she was given the full name Keishla Marlene Rodríguez Ortiz at birth. Her parents, Jose and Keishla Rodríguez, also had another daughter named Bears Nicole, and they raised Keishla's son Jonathan from her previous marriage. Keishla grew up as an outgoing and sociable girl, excelling academically and nurturing aspirations of becoming a veterinarian. Her closest confidant was her sister Bears, with whom she shared all of her secrets and concerns. Keishla attended the same school as Felix Verdejo, who was of the same age. The two had known each other since childhood, forging a strong friendship over the years. In 2011, Rodriguez's parents divorced, and Keishla relocated to live with relatives in Florida. Despite this upheaval, Keishla and her sister chose to remain in San Juan. Although they pursued separate paths by then, they remained deeply connected, sharing every aspect of their lives with each other. At the age of 18, Felix entered into a romantic relationship with a young woman named Elisa Maria Santiago Sierra, who harbored aspirations of becoming a model. Despite still being in school at the time, Elisa had grand dreams for her future. Elisa's parents didn't object to the relationship. Felix, with his charm and talent, had always attracted numerous admirers and had risen to become a boxing sensation, enjoying the limelight and the attention from women. Despite his committed relationship with Eliza, he didn't shy away from flings or brief affairs on the side. He also maintained his friendship with Keishla, as well as her sister Beres and their mother, Keishla Rodríguez, who were aware of the affair and disapproved of it. The situation was fraught with ambiguity. While Eliza saw herself as Felix's one and only, eagerly preparing for their wedding and envisioning a future together, Keishla couldn't let go, still holding on to hope as Felix was her first love. In 2016, Felix tied the knot with the young Eliza, who was just shy of 19 at the time. By then, Eliza had risen to fame as a model, boasting a sizable following on social media platforms and even launching her own beauty studio, specializing in eyelash extensions. However, tragedy struck mere months after their wedding. In August of the same year, Felix was involved in a severe motorcycle accident. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, suffering from head injuries, bruises, and lacerations. His trainer, Ricky Marquez, feared that the incident might jeopardize Felix's burgeoning career. However, contrary to dire predictions, Felix made a remarkable recovery and swiftly returned to the boxing ring. In September 2019, the boxer posted an update on his social media profile. The post featured a photo of Felix alongside a visibly pregnant woman, accompanied by a caption stating, "Soon, I will meet my daddy's princess." A month later, he announced the birth of his daughter, Miranda Verdejo Santiago. Publicly, Felix portrayed himself as a devoted husband, loving father, and model family man. However, unbeknownst to his wife, he continued to rendezvous with Keishla. Eliza later confessed that she harbored suspicions about her husband's infidelity, but each time he tearfully promised to end the affair. Despite Keisha's efforts to sever ties, Felix resorted to threats, warning her of dire consequences if he discovered she was involved with someone else. Despite everything, Keishla, who had been enamored with Felix since high school, couldn't shake her feelings for him. Meanwhile, Rodriguez pursued her passion for animals and landed a job at a veterinary medicine and aesthetics center. Colleagues praised her as diligent, dedicated, and exceptionally responsible. She shared her home with 2 dogs and a cat, which she adored. In 2020, Eliza stumbled upon correspondence between her husband and several mistresses, including Keishla. Fuming with anger, she confronted Felix and promptly kicked him out of their home, threatening divorce and denying him access to their daughter. Eliza's ultimatum seemed to have an effect. Although Felix briefly halted communication with Rodriguez, he still exerted influence over her, attempting to monitor her every move. After a clandestine rendezvous, Keishla resumed her encounters with Felix, and in April 2021, she discovered she was pregnant. She purchased a rapid test from the drugstore, which confirmed her suspicions. Initially, she confided in her sister, who was already aware of her complex relationship with the athlete and shared everything with her. Abortion wasn't an option for Keishla, as she was 27 years old and ready to raise the child alone if necessary. A few days later, she broke the news to the father of her child, hoping for acceptance. But Felix's reaction was far from supportive. He grew enraged and insisted that Keishla visit a doctor to verify the pregnancy, declaring that if it was confirmed, she must have an abortion. Naturally, Keishla staunchly refused, but Felix began to threaten her, asserting that an illegitimate child would tarnish his reputation, which he couldn't allow. Following Keisha's hospital visit confirming her pregnancy, she called Felix to inform him, which only fueled his fury. He yelled at her, demanding she immediately terminate the pregnancy, but Keishla remained resolute in her refusal. In retaliation, Felix expressed disbelief and insisted on personally examining the medical certificate. He arranged to meet Keishla in the evening at a busy location, a move that didn't surprise her, as they typically avoided drawing attention and preferred to maintain a low profile. A few days before the scheduled meeting, Felix visited his old friend, Luis Antonio Cadiz, who worked at a local machine shop and had connections in the criminal underworld, dealing in illicit drugs. Felix briefly outlined the situation to Luis and requested his assistance in dealing with his pregnant mistress. Luis, who had previously attracted police attention, hesitated due to the risk of imprisonment. However, Felix persisted, assuring him that everything would proceed smoothly and they wouldn't be caught by the police. Furthermore, Felix offered a substantial cash reward, ultimately convincing Louis to agree. With the aid of his accomplice, Felix contacted Keishla and arranged to meet her on the evening of April 29th to discuss her pregnancy. Immediately after speaking with Felix, Keishla called her sister and disclosed everything, still holding out hope that Felix would accept the child and not demand an abortion. However, Baris was deeply troubled upon learning about Felix's threats towards her sister. Despite their combined efforts, they couldn't dissuade Keishla from attending the meeting. At the designated time, Rodriguez arrived at the meeting in her own car, a Kia Forte, while Verdejo drove his pickup truck, with Louis concealed in the back. Keishla presented Felix with the test results, and once again, he insisted on abortion. However, Keishla tearfully refused. The argument escalated into a violent altercation, during which Felix struck Keishla in the head, causing her to lose consciousness. Upon regaining consciousness, Keishla found Felix holding a syringe filled with illegal substances procured by Louis. Together, they injected Keishla with the substance, and with the assistance of his accomplice, they bound her, attached a concrete block and wire, and covered her with a tarp for concealment. Felix returned to the pickup truck, while his accomplice took control of Keisha's car. Together, they drove to the bridge over the San Jose River. Under the cover of night, the lagoon lay deserted, ensuring their actions went unseen. Ensuring the coast was clear, the men, without a witness in sight, tossed Keishla, still clinging to life, into the water. Following this heinous act, they decided to fire several test shots in pursuit, employing the firearms they had brought along to eradicate any chance of the victim surviving. With their ruthless deed done, each perpetrator departed for their respective homes. Concern arose among Keisha's co-workers when she failed to appear at the Veterinary Medicine and Aesthetics Center the following day. Known for her reliability, she wouldn't skip work without giving notice. With no response to their calls, they turned to her sister for answers. After multiple unsuccessful attempts to reach her, Boris went to Keisha's residence. Although no one answered the door, she possessed a spare key and gained entry easily. However, she was met only by hungry animals left unfed for nearly 24 hours. Boris, gripped by panic, realized that something dreadful had occurred. She promptly contacted her mother, detailing everything, including the threats against Keishla, before alerting the authorities to her suspicions. Despite Boris's efforts, Felix maintained that he had spent the previous evening and night at home with his family and had not attended any meeting. Keisha's mother hastily flew from Florida to San Juan, consumed by dread. She feared Felix might have whisked her daughter away to a clandestine clinic, coercing her into an abortion against her will. The mere thought of Keisha's potential demise was unbearable. The initial step involved questioning Keisha's neighbors and colleagues, yet they noticed nothing untoward and provided scant leads for the investigation. Meanwhile, messages regarding Keisha's disappearance flooded popular social media platforms, urging anyone with information about her fate or whereabouts to step forward. The case rapidly garnered widespread attention, particularly upon the revelation that Keishla was in a long-standing relationship with a renowned athlete and was carrying his child. Reporters scrambled to interview any of Rodriguez's family members, who didn't hesitate to voice their suspicions. Fingers were pointed at Felix, among others, for the events of April 30th. Keisha's car was discovered abandoned on the east side of the city that day, containing her documents and personal belongings. The absence of signs of struggle within the vehicle offered a glimmer of hope for finding its owner alive. On May 1st, a passerby walking across the bridge over the lagoon noticed an unusual shape resembling a human body in the shallow waters. They promptly alerted the authorities, who soon retrieved the body of a young woman from the water, presumably the individual the entire city had been searching for. Members of the Rodriguez family, upon arriving to identify the body, clung to hope until the last moment that it wasn't Keishla, only to have their hopes shattered. Despite the body's condition after spending several days in the water, the girl was swiftly identified by a distinctive tattoo on her arm. Upon news of the grim discovery spreading to the media, the city's inhabitants were incensed and began staging impromptu protests, demanding justice for those accountable. On the same day, Verdejo was apprehended and brought in for questioning at the police station. However, the athlete vehemently refuted any involvement, asserting that on the night of Keisha's disappearance, he was at home with his family. With no evidence to press charges, Felix was released on bail. One of the primary witnesses was the athlete's legal wife, who confessed during initial interrogation to being aware of his affair with Keishla, but claimed she only discovered her rival's pregnancy at the same time as everyone else. Adding to the mounting evidence against Felix, his wife did not corroborate his alibi, stating that he was not at home on the night of the murder. Investigators immediately reviewed traffic surveillance footage along the route to the bridge where Keishla was thrown, leading them to discover Felix's pickup truck and the victim's car traveling in tandem. However, it was evident that the Kia Forte was not being driven by its owner. On the same day, the boxer's vehicle was seized for examination, yielding traces of the victim's hair on its body. Louis was the first to surrender to the authorities, offering to divulge the entire truth in exchange for a reduced sentence. Felix was also taken into custody, but remained uncooperative, refusing to answer questions and persistently denying his involvement. Despite the existence of incontrovertible evidence, including a firearm seized from Felix, which was used in the fatal shooting from the bridge and for which he possessed an official permit, he maintained his stance. Additionally, a cell phone analysis confirmed that Felix, Louis, and Keishla were all present at the same location on the night in question. Keisha's final farewell took place on May 8th, with the funeral ceremony dominating national news coverage. It served as a rallying cry for justice to be served to the fullest extent of the law and highlighted the issue of gender-based violence. Instead of a traditional hearse, Rodriguez's coffin was transported to the cemetery in a white carriage, showered with white flower petals from above. Numerous prominent figures in Puerto Rican society, including celebrities, athletes, politicians, and public figures, voiced their condemnation of the tragedy. The high-profile incident involving Verdejo resulted in charges of carjacking, kidnapping, premeditated murder, and the murder of an unborn child, all of which carried the death penalty. However, from the outset, the victim's relatives urged the court to impose a life sentence on the perpetrator, ensuring he would suffer in captivity for the remainder of his days. The trial was repeatedly delayed due to the global coronavirus pandemic, but in the spring of 2021, it proceeded in a virtual format. The court determined that the crime was committed by a group of individuals in premeditated conspiracy and with particular cruelty toward a pregnant woman. The sequence of events that night and the specifics of the crime were reconstructed primarily through the testimony of Luis, who confessed his role. He admitted to procuring the drugs for injection at a friend's request and supplying the wire and concrete block used to dispose of the body. However, Felix persisted in denying any involvement, though his claims held little sway. Interestingly, the boxer's wife, who testified as a witness in court, promptly filed for divorce after her husband's arrest, seeking to distance herself from the unfolding events while focusing on her business and raising their young daughter. According to reports, Elisa Santiago has since remarried. In an interview, she confessed feeling trapped in a toxic relationship and expressed relief at moving forward. Elisa received numerous anonymous threats and death wishes directed at her and her daughter, with many speculating she might have orchestrated the crime. However, no evidence supporting such claims was found. In the summer of 2023, it was announced that the jury, having reviewed all evidence and heard witness testimonies, had reached a final verdict. Felix Verdejo and his accomplice Luis Cadiz were found guilty on all charges. Despite this, sentencing for the perpetrators is pending, with the next court hearing scheduled for mid-November 2023. It's likely that both individuals involved in the deaths of Keishla Rodríguez and her unborn child will receive life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Thank you for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more intriguing stories, documentary true crime ahead.